What is up, guys? Welcome to the video that was supposed to be released on Christmas Day. Now I know it's a little bit late, but today we're finally going to be taking a look at the 2022 outdoor Christmas light display that I did here at my house. And don't worry guys, as always, the setup consists of 100% incandescent lights. There is not one single LED in this display. With that being said guys, let's go ahead and take a look at what I did for the outdoor Christmas light display for 2022. Let's switch it up a little bit this year and start on this side of the yard. The first thing you're going to notice here is that the lights on this tree are wrapped higher than I've ever put lights on this tree before. I think this looks absolutely killer. The camera really doesn't do it justice, but trust me guys, in person, this looks freaking killer. I do still have two different color palettes of lights on this tree. However, just like I said last year, it's not super noticeable from a distance, and even from where I'm standing, it's not super noticeable. But of course, if you do get closer, you can see that the lights toward the bottom of the tree do look just a little bit different than the ones near the top. Now, the next thing that's new this year is these 4 new spiral trees. Now, I found these at Home Depot, I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. The reason they're so close together is because they're actually linked to each other. I didn't notice that when I bought these things. I guess it's not too big of a deal, but I do wish I could have spaced them out a little bit farther than like 2.5 feet. Either way though, it is definitely cool to have some new spiral trees in the yard this year. And coming back behind the new spiral trees is a classic. I've had this thing, I believe, since 2016. This is the tallest spiral tree I own. And yes, I still haven't fixed the star on the top of it, unfortunately. However, this year I decided to wrap some colorful Christmas lights around the core of the tree. It looks kind of cool. It doesn't have as big of an effect as I would have liked, but you can definitely notice that there is a little bit of color in the middle of this tree now. And, you know, other than the star and the sad state of the spiraling on this tree, it looks pretty solid. Another thing that's new this year that I have never done before is the lights that stretch all the way around the perimeter of each yard that we have at the front of the house here. I actually wanted to do this last year, but as I mentioned, it was really hard to get your hands on any lights at all last year. This year, that has thankfully improved, and I was able to buy a ton more Christmas lights, and I was able to outline the perimeter of each yard with Christmas lights. I should have taken a picture of it. I have no idea why I didn't, but it snowed a couple of days here, and these lights looked awesome under the snow. You can kind of see the effect here just a little bit, but when it was the entire stretch of these lights buried in snow, it looked awesome. And we of course have the same blow molds right here. We have the 2 candles, the Santa, and the snowman. Moving up to the sidewalk railing, I'm sure you guys noticed that I did finally get my hands on some new motion lights. Now I know I said these motion lights were going to get a video of their own this year. However, if you guys watched the video I put up earlier today, you'll know why that fell through. But I did get them put up on the railing here. I've got 2 strands of them. I wish I had bought more. Unfortunately, I didn't. I have them going up from the bottom of the railing, and then one strand goes this way, and the other strand goes this way. However, I did something a little bit different on this side. I decided to actually zip tie the strand right there at the bottom, so I didn't waste a bunch of it wrapping it all the way up here. And when it hits the top of this decorative metalwork, or whatever you want to call it, it comes right over here and spirals down this corner where I don't think I've actually ever put lights before. And then after I went through all the work of zip tying it to save some length, I had too much, so I just wrapped it around this downspout right here. Another thing I said that I wanted to do last year that actually happened this year was putting colorful lights on this side of the porch. Don't get me wrong guys, I really like the blue lights I had here last year, but having it match with the rest of what I have going around the railings just looks nicer. We do of course still have the 2 strands of C9 bulbs going around this window, and then around, I guess you'd call this a windowsill, and then going up and along the roof until it ends. I unfortunately wasn't able to find any more opaque C9 strands this year. But regardless of that, I still think the C9s add a good effect to this entire setup right here. And I of course kept up with my tradition of sticking a few random twinkle C9 bulbs in each strand. We still got the little Santa guy hanging right here in his usual spot. I've had this thing I believe ever since 2002. I really don't remember when my parents bought it, but it's been around for a long time and it still works, other than the 3 lights that I still haven't fixed. And it looks like we lost another one this year. But for potentially being 20 years old, I'd say that's a pretty good run. Maybe next year I'll find some replacement red bulbs for it. We've still got the usual white icicle lights going along the gutter all the way across the front of the house. And unfortunately, the wind broke some of the hooks that I had holding these up to the gutter, which is kind of a shame, but that's just what happens. But if you look behind it, you'll notice that I've got the colorful icicle lights again. And check this out, guys. This is another thing I wanted to do last year. You guys remember how last year the colorful icicle lights ended right about here? Well, this year I finally managed to get a hold of enough of these colorful icicle lights to go all the way to the end of the house and meet up with the end of the white icicle lights. And for those of you wondering, the icicle light strands end right there. Another thing you may have noticed that's new this year is this strand of lights going around the garage door. I think these are pretty neat. They've got like bundles of 3 of the same color instead of just 1 light every few inches. It definitely looks pretty cool. However, what I didn't take into consideration when I bought these was the fact that, you know, they're only 150 lights per strand, which means they're going to be pretty short strands because they've got 3 lights in the same spot that 1 light would be on a normal strand, if that makes sense. Either way, though, I definitely underbought for these, so they end right here. Unfortunate, but next year we'll get that fixed. One more thing I want to point out is this kind of weird looking deal right here on the edge of the yard. The strand that I have starting there and then going all the way around the yard actually came up a little bit short and it ended right here. But that actually ended up working out okay because this is one of the strands that's on the railings and these are 70-foot strands. So after I finished covering up the entire railing, I stapled it to the ground out here and finished it up, and then had a good amount left over, so I wrapped it around this little bird feeder thing. It looks okay on the bird feeder, but because the post is so thin, all of the lights ended up on one side of it, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's still better than just having them laying in the middle of the yard doing nothing. And we of course still have the red and green floodlights and the driveway motion light. All right, now moving on to the left side of the driveway, you'll notice I did the same thing that I did over there with running Christmas lights around the perimeter of the yard here. Again, I really like the look of this. I'm probably going to keep doing this every year because I just think it looks cool. It just adds a little bit more depth to the look of the whole setup, having lights coming out, you know, all the way out to the sidewalk. And I also decided to move the 2 other spiral trees that I've had since 2016 over to the yard on this side of the driveway. And that brings us to the slingshot tree. Now here's the thing, guys. I've got the same colorful Christmas light net deal at the bottom here, and when I plugged it in, it was working great, and then 2 of the 3 sections on it decided to stop working. So what I did was I wrapped the, you can actually see the blue strand that was on the porch last year wrapped around the tree, and then I wrapped a couple of multicolor strands around it just to kind of put a band-aid on it for this year. Hopefully I can get this thing fixed, but if not, I'm just gonna have to pick up a new one, which is actually kind of sad because I've had this net since 2016, I believe is when we picked it up, but it's definitely a lot older than 6 years old. So hopefully I can get it fixed. But if not, it's just the way it goes. And yet another thing I was able to do this year that I wanted to do last year is kind of fill in the gap right here in this tree where there weren't any lights last year. I think this is the best the slingshot tree has ever looked out here. You can see at the top of the tree here, I've got the height on each side pretty much exactly even, which is pretty cool. Now, I wanted to go higher, but I actually underbought on Christmas lights, believe it or not. I was actually impressed that 2 strands were able to make it all the way around, for the most part at least, on that yard. And this is actually just 1 strand of multicolor lights going around this yard. And it kind of goes over this way to give power to these trees. I'll get more into that tomorrow in the behind the scenes video for this setup. But here's the thing, guys, these lights aren't going to go anywhere until they break. So next year I'm going to buy the exact same amount of lights that I bought this year and add them to all of the lights that are already up out here. So next year is going to be even cooler than this. And this is already the biggest Christmas light setup that I have ever done at this house. We'll end off with one last wide shot out here, minus the floodlights. Those turned off because they stopped detecting motion. But there you go, guys. That's what the house looks like from across the street. I think it looks awesome, especially this tree right here. I really love the way that looks with how high I have the lights on it this year. So there you go, guys. That is going to be it for the 2022 outdoor Christmas light display. If you're interested in seeing how I wired all of this stuff up, come back tomorrow. I'll be showing you how I did that. Until then, guys, that is going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, thank you for watching.